Hi, I'm Wolfie Baby, and today I'd like to show you my latest record show haul. I live in New York City, and in the city we're lucky enough to have at least one or two big record shows a month. I'm sure more if you really sought them out. But 2 weeks ago I headed out to Massapequa, Long Island, where the VFW Hall holds a monthly record show. VFW is the Veterans of Foreign War Lodge. And let me tell you, it's kind of fun to use a urinal with a Hanoi Jane sticker on it. These guys never forget. So at this show, I ended up going right up to my spending limit. I came home with 25 albums. Now, like a lot of us back around the turn of the century, I ended up getting rid of way too many records I should never have gotten rid of, thinking that digital downloads was going to be the next best thing. So out of those 25 albums, the first 10 I'm going to show you are albums that actually are coming back home again. Let's start off. From November 1970, Sly and the Family Stone's Greatest Hits. Now, this is a single album compilation. Nice picture of Sly on the back. Nice picture of the family on the inside. A rock critic no less than Robert Christgau wrote that while he had doubts about the band's album work, this compilation is one of the single greatest rock and roll LPs of all time. And I found a website that actually tracks the number of samples, what songs have been sampled on what tracks. Ends up that Sly is like one of the top artists sampled in modern music today. It can be described as the perfect blend of hard rock, psych music, funk and soul. Just a great party album. State of Confusion from 1983. 20th studio album by the Kinks. As you can see from the hype sticker, hope I'm getting it there, it's the original price tag, and it comes with one of their biggest hits, Come Dancing. I fear I'm kind of becoming a Kinks completist. From 1984, Learning to Crawl, the Pretenders' third album. Learning to Crawl because at the time, Chrissie Hynde's Newborn was just learning to crawl. Great songs. Middle of the Road, Back on the Chain Gang, and My City Was Gone, which a certain American radio personality used that as his favorite piece of bumper music, but we won't name names. Now here's an album I should never have gotten rid of. 1976, Teenage Depression, Eddie and the Hot Rods. Debut album by this sort of like pub rock band that was starting to edge over into punk. Sounds kind of like early Clash to me. And this album cover is just killer. Now in 1989, Rolling Stone wrote an article about the 100 top albums in the 1980s. And this album came in at number 30. How Will the Wolf Survive by Los Lobos, their 1984 major label debut. Going back 2 years, 1982, the fifth album from Squeeze. The big hit on this one is Black Coffee in Bed, and it came with this neat hype flap. It's perforated so you could remove it if you wanted, but I would guess most people kept it. 2 Devo albums ended up coming home with me, back to the family. 1980, Freedom of Choice with their biggest hit ever, Whip It. And they followed that up in 81 with New Traditionalists. Now you can see from the hype sticker, this album came with a limited edition poster and a 7-inch single, Working in the Coal Mine, which was a big hit for them, and also a big hit in 1966, written by Alan Toussaint for Lee Dorsey in 1966. From 1980, Clues by Robert Palmer. Great songs like Looking for Clues, Johnny and Mary. Chris Franz, the drummer from the Talking Heads, and Gary Newman of Cars fame ended up helping them out on this album, and they played on some of the tracks. Now, this is the only album by a group called Blue Angel in 1980. Now, this particular lead singer, front girl for the group, hated this album cover. She said it made her look like Big Bird. And I know most of you know, but if you don't, you'll certainly recognize her from that picture. Of course, Cyndi Lauper blew up 3 years later with one of the top albums of the 80s, She's So Unusual. So that's it for the records that were in my collection. So now the ones that are new to me. Now this album I actually did have in my collection already. Blondie's self-titled debut album. But I had it as a first press November 1977 Chrysalis release. The thing is that this record actually came out in December of 1976 on the Private Stock label. So what happened is this album didn't get the label. Private Stock was a label that was in effect from like 1974 to 1978. It has such notable stars as David Soul, Frankie Valli, Peter Lamongello. So there really wasn't a lot of promotion behind the record. It charted in England and Australia. And in the summer of 77, they started touring. They did a tour of England. And they actually started getting a lot of buzz around them. So they got a new manager, and he negotiated with Private Stock to jump labels. Chrysalis Records fronted the band, advanced them on royalties, $1 million. That put them in the hole for a couple of years. But not only is this an album that the cover is in great shape, as you can see, pretty nice. It's actually an unplayed promotional album. So this was the most expensive albums that I bought, but still not as expensive as I was expecting to find. I've actually been looking for this album for about the last year or so. And now, thanks to Thor, who does the Metal Minute on Rachel's Ghost YouTube live stream, I've ended up picking up my first 2 metal albums. Love Drive by the Scorpions, 1979, their 5th album. Famous, somewhat controversial cover by Hypnosis. Same people on the back. And I got the delicious Naughty Bit censored by myself there. And from 1984, Love at First Sting, their 9th album. This has their biggest hit in the US, Rock You Like a Hurricane. I'm not sure if this is a Hypnosis album, but I would highly recommend the documentary on Netflix that's about Hypnosis. The album cover creators. This album was already in my collection, but for like $5, I couldn't pass up a nice US first press on a Decca label. The only thing this had was just fingerprints and dust on it. So, had to come home with me. Another hard to pass up. I mean, since I've invested in a mono cartridge, I pick up as many early mono jazz and rock albums. This is from 1960, a second press in mono of GI Blues. Nice picture of Elvis there. And pretty nice picture here of him with the tank on the back. Now, the thing is, when I first started my career back in the early 80s, I was working with a guy who was fast coming up on retirement age. Ends up, he was stationed in Germany on the same base as Elvis was, and at the same time. So, of course, I asked him, you know, did you ever meet him? Did you ever talk to him? And he just started going into a rant, saying, you know, all crusty like, you know, Dad MFer, he was the only guy who was allowed to sleep off base. You know, and every morning before 5 o'clock, some blonde in a Cadillac that looked like Marilyn Monroe would drop him off. So, interesting tidbit. I'm finishing up my collection of James Bond 1960 soundtracks. This is 1969, first press on Her Majesty's Secret Service on the United Artists label. It's kind of like the cheesiest of covers, you know. There's an illustration on the front, illustration on the back, and just some photographs from the movie. You know, no Sean Connery, just George Lazenby. But I think I'm only missing Dr. No and You Only Live Twice now. This album is special for me. Came out in July of 1977. And in August of 1977, I saw my first concert. Yes, at Madison Square Garden, when I won tickets through a Daily News mail-in contest. It's a single album. Interestingly, I guess you call that a trifold cover. On the inside, nice pictures of the band. Some nice landscape. Well, I don't think that's any of the band members on the front of the album. Donovan was the opening act for them in 1977. And that was before they went into their In the Round type shows. From 1979, In the Heat of the Night, U.S. First Press, Santa Maria, Pat Benatar's debut album, which actually was bigger in Canada than it was in the U.S. And all you have to do is listen to her voice on Heartbreaker to know just how powerful it was. This 1969 reissue of the 1967 debut album by Vanilla Fudge. Now, here on the back, they kind of look just like clean-cut college students at the time, except maybe their suits are a little fancier. But I'm really looking forward to hearing their versions of Eleanor Rigby and Ticket to Ride. Now, it's almost embarrassing for me to admit that this is my first AC/DC album. A U.S. first press in 1981 of Dirty Deeds, Done Dirt Cheap. Another Hypnosis album cover. When this album came out in 1981, it came out a month after Bon Scott had died. This album actually came out in 1976 in Europe, the UK, and New Zealand, so US was a bit behind the times as far as came to catching on to AC/DC. I picked up two 12-inch singles, but I have a soft spot for Wham. Again, I also, if you don't appreciate them, just give that Netflix documentary on them, World. It's amazing. 1983, Bad Boys, 12-inch. And a 1986 12-inch from Madonna, Papa Don't Preach. Now, admit it, how many of you guys videotaped that video? You know, trying to catch just the right freeze frame of that wardrobe malfunction she had. Also from 1986, King of America. This is rated as one of his top albums, but I kind of lost track. He's one of my top 5 artists, Elvis Costello. But I kind of lost track of him after the first 5 or 6 albums, and I think the reason is that when we're teenagers, our rock heroes are either in their late 20s or early 30s, and as we start entering, or at least as I started entering young adulthood, 21, 22, these guys were quite possibly starting to face their first midlife crisis. So they kind of outgrew us. So I think I'm old enough now to maybe give this a whirl and appreciate the music. I mean, I know he's good. 1981, Styx, Paradise Theater, their best-selling album in the United States. 3 weeks in the chart, 3 weeks at the top of the charts. Oh wait, this is the front. Gala premiere, Paradise Theater. On the back, temporarily closed. This album also rated a gatefold. Single album. Nice pictures of the band and album lyrics. Now, is this a guilty pleasure or not? You decide. 1986, Slippery When Wet. I mean, say what you will, but if you're in a bar in the US and, you know, a song like Living on a Prayer comes on, you're going to see at least half the guys go into heavy dad rock mode, you know? Rock out. The last 2 albums that I picked up from the same artist, from one of my favorite years in music. I always get this wrong. Oops. The Smoker You Drink, the Player You Get by Joe Walsh. Now, just till a few days ago, I never knew that this was a play of words on the phrase, the higher you get, the better you play, which I don't think is necessarily true. So this album is also a gatefold. And if you flip it up, you know, the album comes out this way. But read it this way. So maybe it's technically a top loader. And if you flip it this way, you see the back. The gatefold's actually pretty neat. Nice picture of Joe there. Anybody who knows or looks at their Eagles albums knows that you can find some pretty interesting sentences or sayings in the Dead Wax, like Victim of Love, VOL, recorded live in the studio on Hotel California. I've always wondered about that stuff, but from getting this album and the next one, I'm starting to suspect it was Joe Walsh who was behind it. In the Dead Wax of this album, there's the phrase Y, the letter Y, because we like you. The old Mickey Mouse club saying. And this one, in the Dead Wax of this one, is the sentence, after 15 years, I still don't know how to spell it. Sismic. 1 L or 2 L's. Which is a tribute to their record producer. Joe Walsh is an Eagles record producer. This is from 1981. And as you can see, a white label promo. It's one of his biggest hits, Life of His Illusion. The name of the album is There Goes the Neighborhood. So that's it. 25 albums. Nice haul. Gotta save up money now. But hope I didn't bore you too much, and just hit the like and subscribe. Have a great day.